Why?
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Ottumwa City Council meeting. And before we get started with our meeting, if everybody would stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Chris will go ahead and take the roll.
Councilmember Hull.
Here.
Councilmember Pope.
Here.
Councilmember Rowe.
Here.
Councilmember Galloway.
Here.
Councilmember McIntyre.
Here.
Mayor Johnson.
Here. The next item is our consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve tonight's consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Chris will take the roll.
Councilmember Hull.
Yes.
Councilmember Pope.
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe.
Yes.
Councilmember Galloway.
Yes.
Councilmember McIntyre.
Yes.
The next item is approval of tonight's city council agenda. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved. Second.
Chris will take the roll.
Councilmember Hull.
Yes.
Councilmember Pope.
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe.
Yes.
Councilmember Galloway.
Yes.
Councilmember McIntyre.
Yes.
The next item is City Administrator Phil Rath's report to the council and the citizens. So I'm going to turn it over to Phil.
All right, thank you, Honorable Mayor. The first item I have up here is from the Ottumwa Cemetery Board of Trustees. There was a proposal from Willett Hoffman to prepare plans and specifications for a new office and maintenance building in the Ottumwa Cemetery. That was estimated $60,470, and Gene Rathje is here along with
John Hunolt from the
with John
Cemetery
as well.
Board
Thank
is
you.
here also. On October 19th, 2022, the Ottumwa Cemetery Board of Trustees voted to proceed with the office and maintenance building project and hire Willett Hoffman of Cedar Rapids, Iowa, to write plans and specifications for the project for a fee of $60,470. RFQ proposals were also received from Shive Hattery and Veenstra and Kim. Willett Hoffman will also provide some project administration work for the project. The current cost estimate from the architect for this project is $975,000. And John Hunolt, chairman of the Ottumwa Cemetery Board of Trustees, is here. He'd like to make a few comments about the project.
Yes, I'm John Hunolt, chair of the cemetery board. And I sent you a letter earlier, a while back here, kind of outlining our situation there. I know we've endured a lot of cuts over the years. We only have 2 full-time staff. They take care of 88 acres of cemetery, and which is really overwhelming. We've tried to get summer help, 4 summer help workers for the summer, but we have difficulty keeping help. So we've really operated with a limited budget. We've been needing a new maintenance building, which is deteriorating, is going to need work sooner or later. We've got an office that's inadequate, deteriorated. We need a building that's accessible and with a bathroom. So our secretary didn't have to go across the street to the gas station to go to the bathroom. But we're proposing is a building where we can incorporate our office and our new maintenance building where we can have our equipment inside and not have to sit outside in the winter. We talked about this. We had a proposal developed in 2017 where I think the cost would be around $400,000. But our requests, there's just never been money available, and we just feel it's about time for us to receive some money to get what's been needed for a number of years. You're either going to have to spend money now or spend it later. Our building's going to need a lot of work, our maintenance building, and our office. Also, our secretary, Lauren McIntyre, her hours have been cut. We only have her for half time. She has difficulty even keeping up with only half time working for the cemetery. So we've absorbed a lot of cuts over the years. Seemed like we kind of got the short end of the stick for a number of years. And we're just really requesting your support for the proposal Gene outlined there. So we can look at trying to get a plan together to develop a building that is sorely needed with a new office. So we would appreciate your help and support. If you have any questions, let me know. But we just would appreciate your support for this project. And if you have any questions, let us know. Thank you.
Does the council have any questions for John?
I got a question, John. How much was the total cost Did you say?
Well, gee, what was? Well, also too, we do have money to put toward that. I think you mentioned we've got 4,500 in ARPA funds. We've got $1,000 from the sale of the house that we sold a while back to put towards this project. We also estimate that the house that we currently rent out on the property next to the shed, that we can get approximately 150,000. So we're looking at approximately 700,000 we can put toward this project.
The only reason I asked, John, I know that you guys need another building and a bigger one and more up to date. My concern with having one that's going to cost that much, how are you guys going to be able to keep up with the preventive maintenance and everything else as short staffed as you guys are now would be my concern moving forward.
Well, I don't see that. We've been trying to get by with what we have. I don't really see that as a problem. I think we've got some good staff that does a good job of taking care of stuff, but just trying to it's going to be a lot easier to maintain a new building rather than having trying to keep repairs in a old building that's quickly deteriorating for us there. So I don't really see that as an issue. We've got some real hardworking staff. We tried to get by. I think we do a great job, but I just think it's going to, if we don't do something, it's start reflecting on our services to the community. And we like to provide a good cemetery and provide good services to our folks in the Ottumwa area. So we like to keep up the quality services for a good, well-kept cemetery. And I think we're just asking a lot of our staff to try to keep up with inadequate facilities.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, John, I was wondering, have you thought of any summer programs like to incorporate students from the high school?
Well, we have, we're not aware. I know, it's just hard to get, like we have, the main job is weed eating, and we got 88 acres. So a lot of folks may show up the first day and they don't return the second day. We have, but we're not really aware of any programs there. We try to sort out different work programs, but it's just hard getting and keeping good quality help. It's hard work, and trying to get people that want to go out and work for what we're able to pay and do weed eating all day. It's just hard. I think we've tried to hold on to at least 4 people, and we've had different 4 summer seasonal help, but it's been difficult to get and keep because it is hard work.
Thank you.
And just for clarification, because I attend several of your trustees meetings, it's my understanding that your board of trustees has the funds to go ahead and pay the architect to put up the specifications, the $60,470. You're not asking the city council to cover that cost, correct?
How is that going to go toward that cost? Gene, we better have to be able to answer that.
Yeah, the cemetery board currently has $100,000 in a fund that's proceeds from the sale of 2 houses that they used to own on Park Street. So that's the fund that would be used to hire the architect and pay them with.
That's what I thought. I just wanted to clarify that. And then will you be requesting any kind of year 2 ARPA funds from the city for this project? Is that kind of what your plan is?
That's very possible. Or also another option would be the upcoming CIP.
Council have any other questions for Gene or John?
Just for clarification, you said that the city staff is having to go across the street and use the bathroom at a gas station if they have to use facilities?
That's correct.
A dirt floor in the basement where she has to go, and it's not real pretty.
No.
Especially in the winter. There's no heat, so I don't think that's really.
That's not acceptable, quite honestly. So,
Staff, if they have to do that. Well, also, if we have people there and they need to go to the bathroom and say, well, sorry, you either have to call down in the old basement or go across the street. I don't think that's a real good reflection on our community.
thank you.
Any other questions or comments from council? If not, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for your time. Gotta get to it in and know the basketball game.
All right. Sorry, Gene, just for clarification, were you looking for action on this item right here? I don't see it elsewhere in the agenda. Just a report?
This is just a report, but the cemetery would like to proceed with this. The Ottumwa Cemetery Board of Trustees is a policy-making board according to the city ordinance. So,
Okay, thank you for clarifying.
yes.
Okay, next item under the admin report is Heartland Humane. We've got Garrett Ross here to represent, he's on the board for Heartland Humane. We are in the process of negotiating a successor agreement, which is set to expire at the end of this year. And Garrett had asked to kind of come forward and explain what they do and how they do it.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much. So I know most people here are probably pretty familiar with Heartland Humane Society, and I'm relatively obviously familiar with it myself, but I just joined their board of directors at the beginning of this year. But let me kind of go back and start a little bit at the beginning. The Heartland Humane Society was actually formed in 1994 by a group of volunteers because there was a large population of unwanted animals in the Ottumwa area. So under the direction of one of our founders, Gene Sporer, who is actually still part of our board of directors today, very active member as a matter of fact, they actually incorporated in 1996 with the first shelter that was located between Ottumwa and Agency. So as a nonprofit, and we are a no-kill shelter, means that we pour our hearts into each and every animal that comes into our facility as well. As a no-kill shelter, that doesn't mean that we never have to make a difficult decision to euthanize an animal, but that is absolutely a last choice resort when we have exhausted all other opportunities as well. But the organization, when it was even formed, they knew that it was going to be a difficult foregoing work with a lot of their limited revenue streams besides adoption fees, fundraisers, and donations. But it was in 2003, through the support of a dear friend of Heartland Humane Society, that they were able to purchase and move to their current location at 314 Fox and Sox Road in the industrial park. So this building was a former sanitation building. And so it really wasn't set and designed for our needs and what we needed to utilize it for. But over the years, we have kind of made it work and really pushed it forward to make sure that it's functioning for our needs. But without any significant improvements or updates besides fencing in well over 10 years, our current facilities are beginning to deteriorate significantly. We're starting to see a lot of issues that are causing issues for both our operations and our annual state inspection for the state for us to be a state certified shelter agency as well. Our staff is stretched very thin at the facility. We've been sitting at less than 60% of our full staffing for most of 2020 in the last several years. And I know that's not a new challenge to anybody. That is a difficulty that everybody is feeling, no question. But we've been relying heavily on volunteers because of that. And we've experienced unscheduled closures due to that as well, which obviously is going to affect us being able to offer adoptions to our community at that same capacity. So, but with reduced staffing levels, we have to prioritize the wellness of the animals. And that really basically limits how often we can be open and serve our community as well. Our shelter has roughly 96 slots, which if you look comparatively speaking with a lot of other communities our size is a pretty good size shelter for our community. 55 of those are for dogs and 41 of those are for cats. And our shelter has been at 100% capacity now for most of this year, which makes it really difficult for us for owner surrenders and alike when people come to us and say they can no longer care for their animals. Here recently, over the last couple of months, specifically, we've had to turn them away. We can't accept any more animals. So we've partnered with the city now for more than 5 years as part of the animal control program. And they hold 10 slots for dogs and 10 slots for cats, though usually it's more heavy on the dog side. Cats are a little bit more difficult to get their hands on. So this year has been, it's like I said, it's been a really strong partnership, and we really want to work to keep the animals safe and make sure to do everything that we can to keep those animals past the standard hold period as well. Through the pandemic, though, where some organizations saw challenges in the pandemic, actually, it was one of the best things for the shelter because we had a record number of adoptions in 2020. As a matter of fact, we had a record number, 1,114 adoptions. And not only that, we had almost no returns out of those animals as well, which is almost unheard of. So this year, currently, we're at about 617 adoptions year to date, and with less than a 15% return rate. So essentially, that's just showing that through our adoption review program, when you come in and apply to adopt an animal with Heartland Humane Society, we don't just turn it right over to you. We make sure that there is a review process to make sure that that animal is going to be a good fit for you. So that way we know we're not just going to see that animal a month later, because that's obviously an important part of making sure that these animals have a forever home. The shelter's regular monthly expenses average about $18,000 a month. It's a lot, and it's grown with adding staffing, and obviously the cost of staffing is going nowhere but up as of late. And no significant increase in our income at the shelter. The shelter has been digging into its cash reserves for the last 12 months to cover our ongoing costs. These funds are beginning to run low, and we can't continue this way, because if we do continue this way, the shelter might be forced to greatly reduce its services or close indefinitely, which would be a very sad thing. Heartland Humane Society needs both the support of the city and our community to continue our important work here. So this year so far, the average amount of reimbursement for animal control expenses is about $580 a month out of our $18,000 a month in expenses. That's less than 4% of our average monthly cost of operations. So while 50% of the animals that we deal with at the shelter come from the city limits of Ottumwa. So really, in closing, what I wanted to just express to you guys, the council and our community this evening, is just making sure that Heartland Humane Society has been a vibrant part of our community for almost 30 years. And we are starting to see some serious financial challenges, and we're going to need your support to ensure the safe and loving home for every animal here in our community. So with that being said, do you guys have any questions for us? And if there's a question I can't answer, like I said, I've only been on the board for a short time. I do have my backup squad with me.
I guess I would have a question, Garrett. Since the shelter periodically, I assume, serves people who have pets within Wapello County, as well as coming from some of the other towns within Wapello County. Does Heartland Humane ever request any kind of annual funding from those other cities or from Wapello County to help with your budget?
That's a good question. Don, come on up here. Don is also one of our board members as well. I do know that we do receive some regular funding from the county, but they are going to be another stop in conversation as well. So they are going to be somewhere else. The number of that we receive from outside of Wapello County is generally pretty low. Don?
Thanks for hearing us tonight, Council and Mayor. I actually presented to the Eddyville City Council back in 2018, and they were very interested, but the situation we have, we can't afford to come to Eddyville and pick up your dog or cat and bring it to the shelter. And so therefore their council didn't see that it fit to do anything for us necessarily, because we couldn't provide services to catch the animal. The county does give us a little money.
Have you talked to agency or Blakesburg
I
or Eldon?
personally, Mayor, have not been over to agency or Blakesburg.
Okay.
Thank you.
They would definitely be on the next stops of conversation. Obviously, kind of looking at the low-hanging fruit. Ottumwa was our very first stop, and I think it's been quite some time since we've really come to the city and really expressed the kind of work that we do at Heartland Humane Society and the kind of support that really truly is necessary for the organization. So yes.
Does council have any questions of Garrett?
So let me get this straight. The city of Ottumwa is spending about $580 a month towards taking care of the slots that we have.
That is correct.
And
That's an average.
Average. But we're holding about 10% of your slots every month, correct?
That's correct.
So on $18,000, 10% of that would really be roughly $1,750, $1,800 a month to be equitable. Okay.
Yeah.
Just making sure my math was right.
Yep.
Well, so just, I guess, a point of clarification on that too. For us, for our agreement, there's a 5-day hold period.
Correct.
Sure.
So after those 5 days, then those animals can get turned over to the society and become their property for adopting out or whatever else. So these animals may originate from the city.
Correct.
But the percentage based, if you looked at total animals and after that 5-day period, is going to be much smaller.
Yeah. Or even at that, for given situations, obviously, I believe as per the agreement currently in place, it has 10 slots for dogs and 10 slots for cats.
Right.
I know that there has been a weekend, probably, correct me if I'm wrong, Pam, within the last 2 months, where we've gotten 12 dogs in a given weekend. Just one weekend at that point. So there are times in which we go above those slots stated as well.
So do we have the data for the last X number of months on what we have done for utilization of Heartland Humane?
Between what we have in our records and what they have in records, I'm sure we could produce that.
Yeah, I'd love to see that. I guess I have a point of clarification too. So Phil, or Administrator Rath, you identified that after 5 days. So if Officer Williams were to bring a dog in after 5 days, then that dog is turned over to the shelter for you to adopt out, correct?
That's correct.
So what happens if the dog is like a dog that we have to remove from a home because, oh my gosh, I am so sorry. Because it's a dangerous animal or something like that. How does that work?
Dangerous animals are a little bit different in that current agreement as well. That dangerous animals are not to be brought to Heartland Humane Society.
Okay.
So there's a couple of, I think, points in there that would classify an animal as a dangerous animal. So, but by the contract agreement, dangerous animals, as they are stated, should not be brought to Heartland Humane
So
Society.
you don't hold any animals that until they are, you don't do that holding period until.
Well, I was about
Seeing
to say
some
that's
head nods back there. So
They could,
Correct.
they have accepted some animals that would be considered dangerous animals. So
correct.
some of the facilities we had previously brought those animals to no longer are accepting them.
Correct.
If Heartland Humane is not able or willing to accept those, and if it's a dangerous animal that nobody can control, I wouldn't expect their staff to do that either.
Correct.
I'm saying I wouldn't expect it. I'm not saying if you could turn them away.
Yep.
But there may be nowhere else for those animals to go. And at that point, the decision may need to be made on the disposition of that animal. It's a harsh reality, but I mean, so I think
guess my
sometimes those
question-
animals are accepted because the alternative is grim for that animal.
We, generally speaking, we try to make sure, like I said, in every eventuality, even if they don't necessarily have a home at our shelter, there might be another shelter that is far better equipped to handle that animal. So, but that is one of the challenges that we have at the shelter as well.
And that is one of the things that we want to clean up in the next language is talking about the dangerous animals and what is able to do with those. I know I've talked with Officer Williams about some other options we may have inside the city at different locations. And one of the reasons why we made one of the changes earlier this year was this current agreement, the past agreement was specific to one facility besides Heartland Humane to take those animals. And they were no longer taking them. So we wanted to open up to anybody that would be qualified to board those animals.
So is, for my own understanding, is that 5-day window also partially to allow people to have time to reclaim a pet that maybe's ran off and somebody's taken them out to Heartland Humane?
That is correct.
What does Heartland Humane do, if anything, to let the public know that they've received a dog that's broken loose or run away? Do you do anything to try and alert the public, hey, we might have your dog out here?
We do. We actually have 2 different Facebook pages. One is specific to animal control because the current agreement actually says that there's a section on the city's website that we're supposed to post them, but it's no longer there. But we do have a Facebook page that is specific to Ottumwa City Animal Control. So any animal that comes in under animal control gets posted on that, along with Heartland Humane Society's website as well. So that way we can make sure to hit as many people as possible to get it out there if we have received their dog through the animal control program.
And to clarify, after the 5-day holding period, then the burden of, not the burden, but the burden of cost becomes Heartland Humane Society's.
That's correct. Not only the burden of costs starting that point forward, but obviously if the animal is not claimed by an owner, we receive no payment from the city for the boarding fees for that 5 to 7 day period beforehand as well. So we get no money. If that animal is not claimed, then we receive no money for that hold period.
So the dollars, I think you're referring to that average $580 per month.
Correct.
That is the $5 per tag that was approved by previous council 2-3 years ago.
For every dog license?
Yes, for every dog license, $5 goes to Heartland Humane. to help offset some of those costs. That's what those dollars are for. Anything else, if a dog is reclaimed and that person pays the city to get that dog or pays the shelter directly, those dollars go in to offset those costs. So there is some provisions in the current agreement talking about a per day fee, if the rabies needs to be done, any other costs, parvo, those things. Those, if they are recovered, do get paid to the shelter. The city doesn't keep those for anything.
So essentially, if an animal is claimed in that window,
Yep.
they will come to the city, they will pay that fine, and then Heartland Humane Society will receive the fees for the boarding of that animal while it was in our care. If, like I said, they stay past that 5-day period, they then become once again the property of Heartland Humane and then our burden at that point as well. And like I said, we don't receive any funding at that point. But that's that $580 is that window of animals that are claimed within that period of time.
So, and I know, Administrator Rath, you said you're working on the contract. And so are we going to have a work session over that? It won't just be presented to council, correct?
Yeah, no,
Okay.
we can
I would
have
really
a,
appreciate that. So we
Yep.
can really go through it with a fine tooth comb. And the other thing too is, so we have had the conversation with Heartland that now in our new ordinance, if we do know an owner and they decide not to claim it, they are sent the bill for the animals, correct?
I don't
Right.
know if that's changed.
yeah,
think
we
that-
haven't
agreement
had
per
that,
se.
that particular
No,
conversation.
I was about to
That's
say, if
definitely a
that's changed at the
conversation we
city
want to ensure
level,
we have.
yeah, our agreement should, like I said, hopefully would reflect some new information as according to that.
Perfect. Yes, I would really like a work session to go through that. Thank you.
So have you and your board already communicated in writing to Administrator Rath what you'd like to see put into this new agreement?
Not in writing specifically, but
Yeah.
I did have a meeting, and I was under the admin report, I was going to mention that.
Correct.
I have had a meeting with Garrett, and I'm assuming reflected other
Mhm.
comments from the board.
Yep.
Have had a meeting with the police chief and Officer Williams about things that they've seen as far as operational aspects. So
Yep.
I guess if there aren't any other questions for Garrett, I can move into my report, which
I
covers.
got
part of
one
that.
question.
Yes, sir.
What does it cost on the average to run the shelter yearly?
Yearly, the big question mark is vet bills. That is one of the big things. A lot of people think that we're going to get some kind of special discount. We don't. We pay the same street price as anybody else. So once again, when an animal comes in, if they need vet care, that's the first stop for that animal. And so if they haven't been cared for, then that can go up drastically. But annually speaking, I would say somewhere in the ballpark of anywhere from $220,000 to $260,000 a year,
Okay. Thank you.
roughly. Was it 350 last year? Last year was 350.
That's why you brought back up.
That's right. Any other questions? All right. Thank you guys very much.
Thank you.
All right, so moving into my report, the first thing I just want to mention, we are working, I had meetings with Garrett, with staff, talking about some of those items. One of the key issues, as you heard just now, is compensation. And so looking at a way to potentially model that a little bit differently, taking into account the costs that are already received through the license fee, but also anything else we may be able to do to support the shelter. Other items of interest, as I understand, we're talking about the possibility of extending the contract from a 1-year to a multi-year deal. And then also any clarifying language or expectations, whether it's dangerous animals, the hold period. I know that's been something is after that 5 days, when does the animal get turned over? There have been a couple of instances where there have been questions or issues and an owner has come after that period and tried to reclaim the animal, and that has caused some issues after the animal had already been adopted or been promised to be adopted, and then the owner shows up. And so trying to help clarify all of those types of things in this as well. So we got a short window, but I'm anticipating that there's some good things we can put in there and then bring that to a work session as suggested by Councilwoman Galloway. Bridge City Sanitation, we have a meeting scheduled. Zach and I have a meeting scheduled to follow up with Bridge City Sanitation. We had one a few months back, it's probably about 6 months ago now. And this is kind of one of those ongoing things we have where we can talk about issues that they have received direct calls to or ones that we've been made aware of. Typically, If Zach or I do receive those, we will notify the owners of the company to try to get those things resolved as quickly as possible. But also, we like to have these meetings to follow up and then talk about if there's any patterns with anything that can also hopefully be resolved, and also to document those issues so we can keep track of if things are being resolved or not. And then the request was made at the last meeting to have them come before the council. That request has been issued, and we're working on getting a date that they're able to come. They did want to have the opportunity to meet with staff first, and that is, like I said, scheduled later this week. And then finally, under the agreements, we do have a proposal out, request for proposal for legal prosecution services. That should be coming around soon, hopefully, and provide some relief to our current legal team. Projects, a couple things that are ongoing. One of these is on later tonight is this depot acquisition. The attorney and others representing the seller for the depot and clubhouse have been working to resolve any questions regarding that clear title. They are optimistic that it could be resolved before the end of the year. They've requested what this part that's on the agenda is a second addendum to move that closing date to a date on or before December 30th. And then a thing to be aware of for in the near future, transfer of the transit building. Since we've shifted our transit operations to 1015, bless you, Wapello County Emergency Management has approached city about purchasing that building. It serves their needs very well, and it's something that I think would be a good fit and an opportunity for us and for them. Building was under some federal and state obligations related to previous funding we received. We needed to clear that. I finally got authorization from the state what that amount would be. We're still awaiting a invoice from the federal government. Once we have those, we can get that before council. It is not going to be cheap. It's probably in the ballpark about $300,000 that we're talking about. However, in preliminary conversations with emergency management and the county, they're willing to potentially pay half of that, and so we can get half of that back. That will clear out our obligations on the federal and state side. So basically, they had loaned the city money in the past, or transit money, to either construct the transit facility out there or to remodel some of those, and then that would basically depreciate out in value. There's too many years left on that to wait that out. So one option would be to buy out that obligation, and that's what we're looking at doing. We can't sell that until we have that cleared up. So that would be one of the methods that we could do. So more on that to come. And that's all I have for tonight.
Did you want to mention anything on boards or commissions?
There are still vacancies available on some boards and commissions. So if anyone's interested, they could go to the city website to see that. There are a couple, like one tonight, it's still going to say vacant on there. As soon as the individuals, and last meeting, there was a couple of people that had signed or had been approved. Once they get their oath, and that has been approved, then that vacancy becomes the person's name. So there are a couple that are not necessarily vacant, but will be cleaned up pretty quick.
Okay, thank you, Phil. The next item on the agenda is where I ask if there's any citizens in the audience that would like to speak on any of tonight's agenda items. And we do have one individual that would like to speak on item G. When we get to that part of our agenda, I'll call on that individual to come up and address the council. Is there any other people in the audience that would like to speak on any of the agenda items tonight? If not, we'll go ahead and move in to our two public hearings that we have.
This is the time, place, and date set for a public hearing on the proposed conveyance of certain real property locally known as 809 Glenwood Avenue, Ottumwa, Iowa, to U.S. Bank National Association.
I'll go ahead and open the public hearing, and I believe Zach Simonson is going to speak on this topic.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council. 809 Glenwood is a property that the city acquired under Iowa Code Section 657A, where we sued to take title to an abandoned property. There was a service issue with a mortgage on the property, which we believe was not correctly recorded, but nonetheless, somebody did hold the mortgage interest and they weren't served. As a result, there's been kind of a negotiation back and forth between the owners of this mortgage and what it seems to make the most sense to get the property sold and to move on where somebody can rehabilitate and finish making this a place people can live is for the holder of that mortgage to reimburse the costs that we've put into the property. We've settled on a figure of $8,500 to do that, at which point this bank could proceed to do some kind of sale and find some kind of buyer and get the property finished up. So the recommendation of the staff is to proceed with the sale and to recover our costs. The other types of options would be to try to litigate out the service issue or to completely start over the 657A process. But if we were to do that, we'd probably need to give this owner a certain amount of time to make repairs.
Does council have any questions of Zach? If not, I'd entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Chris will take the roll.
Councilmember Hull?
Yes.
Councilmember Pope?
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe?
Yes.
Councilmember Galloway?
Yes.
Councilmember McIntyre?
Yes.
Resolution number 256, 2022, approving and authorizing the conveyance of certain real property locally known as 809 Glenwood Avenue, Ottumwa, Iowa, to U.S. Bank National Association. Recommendation: pass and adopt resolution number 256, 2022.
Move the recommendation as presented.
Second.
Chris will take the roll.
Councilmember Hull?
Yes.
Councilmember Pope?
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe?
Yes.
Councilmember Galloway?
Yes.
Councilmember McIntyre?
Yes.
This is the time, place, and date set for a public hearing on the application and proposal for the voluntary annexation of property to the city of Ottumwa, Iowa.
I'll go ahead and open the public hearing, and I believe Zach's also going to present on this.
Thank you, Mayor. The owners of the property at 1235 Hutchison have applied for voluntary annexation, and this resolution would approve that request. Consultation meeting was held with the county. Public notices have been served to neighboring property owners and published publicly. Plan and Zoning Commission has made the recommendation to approve the annexation. And we've already held public hearings on the matter of the zoning for the property. If the zoning ordinance, which is the next item on the agenda, were approved as well, then the annexed property would be used to construct a Dollar General retail store, which would be served by city sewer and other facilities. The future land use plan did review this area, even though it wasn't in the city, because it was part of the planning area looked at by the plan. And the comprehensive plan and the future land use plan do identify annexation targets in areas that are suitable for community commercial use. This is priority 3 annexation area along the bypass exit there. And so accepting applications for voluntary annexation in that area would be appropriate under the plan. It describes it as, quote, it would best position the city for future development and also, quote, create locations suitable for shovel-ready business development, which is the case here. So with the recommendation of the Plan and Zoning Commission and with the future land use plan identifying the areas suitable for voluntary annexation, the staff recommendation is to approve the resolution.
Does council have any questions of Zach?
Just a couple. You said you had the meeting with the county. What was the county's opinion?
Nobody attended the consultation meeting. But I have since had a conversation with one of the county supervisors, and they just wanted to make sure that we were going to work out sort of arrangements for snow plows and things, because we already sort of share some arrangements on that, and that's something we've looked at, but that was the only thing that they discussed.
And I'll ask one final time on each one of these points, just for public knowledge. This was a private party transaction. They already own the land, so
Right.
it is what it is as far as the land goes. Dollar General already has that land, or at least
they
on
have
their
a
way
purchase
to.
option, something like that. It
Okay.
is a private party transaction. The city didn't go out and recruit Dollar General. The city doesn't own the property. What we're supposed to look at with the annexation and really with the zoning code as well is the types of uses that are appropriate, whether this community commercial type use is appropriate, not necessarily the specific person that's applying or the specific business they're trying to do,
Sure.
but more in the zoning category.
Okay. Thank you.
Council have any other questions for Zach? If not, I'd entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Chris will take the roll.
Hang on just a second.
Second.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Hull?
Yes.
Councilmember Pope?
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe?
Yes.
Councilmember Galloway?
Yes.
Councilmember McIntyre?
Yes.
Resolution number 267, 2022, approving an application for voluntary annexation of certain land, 1235 Hutchinson Avenue property to the city of Ottumwa, Iowa. Recommendation pass and adopt resolution number 267, 2022.
Move the recommendation is presented.
Second.
Chris will take the roll.
Councilmember Hull?
Yes.
Councilmember Pope?
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe?
Yes.
Councilmember Galloway?
Yes.
Councilmember McIntyre?
Yes.
Ordinance number 3210, 2022, an ordinance amending the zoning ordinance of the city of Ottumwa, Iowa by conditionally rezoning property generally located at 1235 Hutchinson Avenue in the city of Ottumwa and directing the zoning administrator to note the ordinance number and date of this change on the official zoning map. Recommendation pass third consideration and adopt ordinance number 3210, 2022.
Is there a motion to approve that recommendation?
So moved.
Second.
Zach, I believe you're going to present.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. So this is the second item on this particular property tonight. This is the third and final consideration for the rezoning, which would allow the property, once it was annexed, to be used for community commercial, or in this case, neighborhood commercial use, C1. The owners of the property have applied for the voluntary annexation and also applied to request the rezoning. The undeveloped property, when it is annexed into the city limits, is annexed as AG Agriculture Urban Reserve Preserve. And so this would rezone it so that it could be used for the development of the retail store. The Plan and Zoning Commission recommended the rezoning on a vote of 5-4, but they recommended two conditions which are included in the ordinance that's had the other two readings. The first is that the property would be developed within 2 years. If the development does not occur within 2 years, then the zoning would need to be reapproved with Plan and Zoning and council review. The second condition is that liquor sales and pawn shop uses are not permitted on the property. Those are uses that would normally be permitted in the C1 zone, but in this case, they would be further restricted and they would not be able to do those uses. As we discussed at some other meetings, the future land use plan designates this property as suitable for community commercial use, and the C1 classification is compatible with that. Staff also finds that the development of the retail store is not incompatible with the surrounding neighborhood, and that the streets that serve the area are adequate for the sort of traffic generated by commercial retail use.
Does council have any questions of Zach? If not, we do have one individual that wanted to speak on this agenda item, and I'll ask her to come forward at this time and state your name and your address, please.
Thank you, Mary Johnson and council. My name is Brenda Hostetler, and my address, I'm here representing Pennsylvania Place Retirement Community, which would be number 1 Pennsylvania Avenue in Ottumwa, Iowa. So I'm here to respectfully request that the council not go through with the proposed Dollar General. I'm here to represent both the owners of Vista Woods Retirement and also Pennsylvania Place Retirement Community. So in 1995, both Vista Woods and Pennsylvania Place started our community there, and it was started because it was a residential area and a quiet area for people to retire to. So if you think about driving in Pennsylvania Place, the area there, Vista Woods, if you go past the hospital, past the clinic, the next entrance is Vista Woods. So that is all owned by Pennsylvania Place. And the small portion that Vista Woods is owned on is owned by the owners of Vista Woods. So jointly, if you look at that whole area, clear up into the corner of Hutchinson and Bladensburg Road and Pennsylvania Place, that's all ours. And so right now, between the two owners, we pay almost $400,000 in taxes. So from 2000 to 2012, I served as the president of Pennsylvania Place, and then the hospital sold us. But during that time, we developed a memory care unit, which is called the Haven. And we also developed the retirement community patio homes. I also at that time appeared before the city council and zoned the property of the corner of Bladensburg Road and Pennsylvania Avenue. So that is all zoned for future development for patio homes. And the owner of Pennsylvania Place has asked me to please let everyone know that they would not be going forward with the development of that area if this Dollar General or any other commercial area is placed across the street from us. So we're hoping that obviously those proposed patio homes will generate more than the $17,000 worth of taxes that it was proposed that the Dollar General would. So as our residents sat on their patio homes or patios outside Pennsylvania Place, they can see across the road there at Hutchinson. And they love that residential area, as most everyone would love if that was your own home. So we respectfully request that that stay in a residential area and no commercial business be placed there.
I'll go ahead and ask, does council have any questions they want to ask of Brenda? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And now Chris will go ahead and take the roll.
Councilmember Hull,
Yes.
Councilmember Pope,
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe,
Yes.
Councilmember Galloway,
Yes.
Councilmember McIntyre.
Yes.
So the motion carries.
Terminate the mowing and nuisance cleanup services contract between the City of Ottumwa and Iowa Fence Incorporated. Recommendation, authorize Director of Community Development to send 30-day notice of termination to Iowa Fence Incorporated.
Do we have a recommendation to approve the recommendation? Motion to approve the recommendation.
Move the
I'm
recommendation is
sorry.
presented.
Second.
Okay, Zach?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council. On April 1st of this year, the city began a 5-year mowing and nuisance cleanup services contract with Iowa Fence Company. Staff has had numerous concerns. Some of those are mentioned in the staff summary. And we recommend exercising the contract provision that allows us to terminate the agreement with a 30-day, without cause, with a 30-day notice of termination. There's another agenda item later at the meeting, which would release an RFP to find a new contractor. There might be a period of time during the month of December where we wouldn't have a contractor for these types of services. We wouldn't need mowing, hopefully. Well, I mean, I'd take sunny weather over snow, I suppose. But we might need to do some nuisance cleanups. We'd probably try to seek out something one-off if that situation comes up. But we think that's probably the best way to proceed, is to try to find a new contractor and to send this 30-day notice. As I said, this is without cause. We just think it'd be the best for our operations to try to find somebody else.
Does council have any questions of Zach?
Just one, Zach. So does this, like, we're not obligated to like pay out a contract fee for this or anything like that? We're
Right.
Just give them a 30-day notice, right?
Correct.
Okay.
If there's no other questions, I'll have Chris take the roll.
Councilmember Hull,
Yes.
Councilmember Pope,
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe,
Yes.
Councilmember Galloway,
Yes.
Councilmember McIntyre.
Yes.
Thanks, Zach.
Consideration of second addendum to real estate purchase agreement by and between the City of Ottumwa and the Wapello County Historical Society. Recommendation, adopt the second addendum to real estate purchase agreement.
Do we have a motion to approve the recommendation?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, Phil, I believe you're going to speak to this.
Yes, so I'd mentioned just briefly under my report. So this is something that was previously approved to move forward with the acquisition of the depot and the clubhouse. As part of that agreement, the contractual obligation there, we were to get an abstract, and that's kind of where the the question came here as far as with closing. So I think the staff did our due diligence in trying to make sure that the city was protected prior to acquiring the property. And that's what led to a little bit of the question here, making sure that the city could obtain clear title and be able to move forward, knowing that we could do what was needed with the property, continue to work with Amtrak, potentially rent out other pieces of that property. If with the clubhouse, rent that out as is being done right now while they're working on the platform project. In the future, we could continue to rent that. Maybe there's some other use for that. But we wouldn't be able to do any of those things without that clear title. And so that was something that we wanted to make sure we had. The city was protected. And so they believe they're on the right track to get all of those items cleaned up and get us clear title, and think they can do that before the end of the year, and just have requested that we continue this agreement in place, and requesting that the attached addendum to the purchase agreement, placing the date for closing not to no later than December 30th of this year.
Does council have any questions for Phil? If not, Chris will take the roll.
Councilmember Hull?
Yes.
Councilmember Pope?
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe?
Yes.
Councilmember Galloway?
Yes.
Councilmember McIntyre?
Yes.
Resolution 262, 2022, authorize the Community Development Director to release an RFP for mowing and nuisance cleanup services for the city of Ottumwa. Recommendation: pass and adopt resolution number 262, 2022.
Do we have a motion to approve that recommendation?
So moved.
Yep. Second.
Okay, Zach.
All right. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council. So with terminating the previous agreement, this resolution would release an RFP in order to find a new mowing and nuisance cleanup services contractor. It's the same RFP pretty much as the one we used earlier in the year. We'd release it tomorrow, and it would be due back December 9th.
Does council have any questions for Zach?
Zach, in here, I'm not seeing, and maybe I'm just missing it. Do you guys give them a deadline of when they need to have? So if I call you today and say, hey, this grass on the south side's tall, you call them and say, hey, clear up this grass. Do you give them a deadline? Is that in the contract?
So the contract refers to the RFP for standards of performance, and I believe that's where it lives. I can see if I can't find it in here. I think, or it was the other way around. Let me see.
Oh, I see it. Okay.
You found it?
Well, no, I see compensation, but it says, number 2, it says dates and times on days, times served contract. I don't believe it gives a specific, it says identify any deadlines for performance here, and then it doesn't really give any deadlines. In the contract part, section 2 and 3.
Give me just a second. I'll find it in here because I know it is in here.
Because I believe that's kind of the problem we're having now, is it's just not being executed in an orderly time period.
This is also an example contract, so it's not exactly like the one that we ended up putting together. So it might be that that's why I'm not finding it. But I do know that we had the expectation was 5 days.
Okay. All right. I believe that's kind of a problem we're having right now, is the time period frame. So, I mean, you got time to look this over and make sure that's in the final contract. But I think that's definitely something we need to make sure that whoever we give this contract to understands that we do expect this to be done in a timely manner, being that by the time we get the complaint and we give it to them, it's already been several months of probably not being mowed as it is. So in the final contract, I'd like to see that there is a timeline in it.
Correct. Yeah, we'll make sure that's in there.
All right. Thank you, Zach. Appreciate you.
Council have any other questions for Zach? Not, Chris will take the roll.
Councilmember Hull?
Yes.
Councilmember Pope?
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe?
Yes.
Councilmember Galloway?
Yes.
Councilmember McIntyre?
Yes.
Resolution number 265, 2022, approve company fleet usage and driver safety policy. Recommendation pass and adopt resolution number 265, 2022.
Is there a motion to approve the recommendation?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, and I believe our HR Director, Barb Kojo, is going to address this item.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, council. So this policy is actually a culmination of 3 existing policies that the city currently has. When I came on board, there were a lot of questions about vehicle use and some of our practices and procedures. So what we did was at the beginning of the year, this has actually been about a 6 to 7 month process. We've been researching, we've consulted with other cities as to what policies they have. We've talked with our insurance agent. We've talked with IMWCA for our workers' comp. We've sat with our employees, talked with them, department heads. We've had numerous meetings going over this policy, really trying to find a best fit approach for everyone, something to be standard and consistent, and really set the expectations of what we're looking for and putting it out there for everybody to have. In the packet that you've got, there's identified some changes. There's nothing really major that changes within this policy. There are new CDL requirements that came out in February of this year, and we do have that reflected into this policy. Just makes it a little bit more stringent to get your CDL. So again, we've done the research and really tried to find a solution that best fits for us.
Does council have any questions for Barb? If not, Chris will go ahead and take the roll.
Councilmember Hull?
Yes.
Councilmember Pope?
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe?
Yes.
Councilmember Galloway?
Yes.
Councilmember McIntyre?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thanks, Barb.
Resolution number 266, 2022, approving change order number 1 and accepting the work as final and complete and approving the final pay request for the Cooper Avenue reconstruction project. Recommendation pass and adopt resolution number 266, 2022.
Move the recommendation as presented.
Second.
And Mr. Seals, you're up.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. This project involved full width, full depth PCC reconstruction of Cooper Avenue, Main Street to 2nd Street. Reconstruction of storm intake, sewer replacement is needed. Change order 1 decreases the contract sum by $34,683.25. The new contract amount is $439,404.75. The contractors completed the above referenced work according to plans and specifications, and this will release all retainage and authorize final payment. We do have just a quick clip of the finished product, a little bit before and after, to give you a bird's eye view. It turned out well. I think that the crews did a good job coordinating with the residents, keeping them in and out. There was some areas of difficulty, but again, it went overall fairly well considering to some homes. You can see the entire corridor from here, but you can kind of get a bird's eye, and then you can also see the before and after, which is kind of good to show the public. You lose track of that from start to finish. I would take a moment to thank all the residents for their patience. This is a good group of residents overall. And that's it, other than the before and afters. There's just a few photos that was tagged on the end of this production.
Does council have any questions for Larry?
Larry, I just had one quick question, and this really has nothing to do with the streets. In looking at the sidewalks, it looks like we were fairly spotty on replacing the sidewalks. Was there just something with very particular areas of the sidewalk that needed replaced and not other areas?
We would replace where utilities were disturbed or carriage walks. If the walk is still in good shape, we don't just go in and replace all of it.
Okay.
On some projects, we do. Sometimes utilities go right underneath them, requiring the removal of the entire walk. But again, if they're serviceable, that's something that we don't typically just do 100% of the time.
Okay. And do those, I can't really tell from that. I can see it right there on the Main Street entrance. Did we put ADA drops on?
We did. We do that at all intersections and required locations.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not seeing the red bars on those other
Alleys
sidewalks.
did not require it. It's Main Street lines.
Okay.
It's a huge improvement from what it was.
Well, and that's one of them that we had a little water damage, and we'll work with Ottumwa Water. They've been getting out ahead of us, which helps. In the past, if you go back enough decades, that was always a problem. We might replace the street and then have a water main break. We've been trying to coordinate with them, and they've been stepping up to the plate on the number of mains and linear feet that they've replaced in the last 10 years. That's pretty much it.
Any other questions for Larry? If not, Chris will take the roll.
Councilmember Hull,
Yes.
Councilmember Pope,
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe,
Yes.
Councilmember Galloway,
Yes.
Councilmember McIntyre.
Yes.
This is the time in our agenda where I ask if there's anyone in the audience that would like to speak on any items that are not on tonight's agenda. If not, the next item is mayor and city council reports. I don't have a specific report to give tonight. Does council have anything that they want to report on or communicate to the public?
I don't have anything tonight.
Okay, if not, I'd go ahead and ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
That's what you call quick. Chris will take the roll.
Councilmember Hull,
Yes.
Councilmember Pope,
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe,
Yes.
Councilmember Galloway.
Yes.
Councilmember McIntyre.
We are adjourned, and thank you, everybody, for attending tonight's city council meeting. Safe travels home.